Hello and welcome back to Here's the Thing. We are here to cover the premiere episodes of Alien Earth. They did a double drop on us, so we're going to review episode 1 and episode 2. If we haven't seen it yet, we are going to talk about spoilers, but we'll keep it spoiler free for the first few moments here, get our thoughts on it without giving it away. But by the end, we are going to give stuff away. So if you want to see our general thoughts, stick around. But if you haven't seen it yet, you might want to run off after that. But I am not alone to give my thoughts. I'm here by not by myself, but with my illustrious co-owner here of the channel, Michael, a big Alien fan. This was one of your most anticipated releases of this year, whether TV shows or movies about anything at all. So you were really hyped on this show. And how are you feeling right now? And how are you feeling about Alien Earth?
Yeah, so I was really hyped about this. Still want to do this. I got really sick yesterday, but I said we would come on here today and do it for you guys. But I was really hyped for this show because this is from Noah Hawley, and Fargo is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. Like, I think Fargo is incredible, and Legion, I liked Legion quite a bit. So I was into both of those shows, and I was curious what he would do with an Alien show. This was 6 years in the making because it was announced 6 years ago, and then now we're finally having an Alien show, and I'm just this to me was everything I wanted it to be and more. I love that this franchise. Pretty much when The Predator came out, I was like, kill the Predator franchise. And then whenever, Prometheus came out and all this stuff, I was like, okay, there's nothing really left to do with the Alien franchise. But then you are getting stuff now like Prey, Alien Romulus, and now Alien Earth. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe these franchises can continue and be like just as good. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I was really curious. Like you said, this is a continuation of a huge franchise. We just had Alien Romulus last year, which was doing a similar thing of kind of trying to revive the Ridley Scott aesthetic and take it back to kind of where the franchise started. And this series is doing a similar thing where it is definitely trying to ape the look and the feel of Alien, but I think it's doing a decent job so far of doing that, but also being a Noah Hawley show, still having his weird sense of humor and his just kind of odd tone. And a lot of stuff he introduces here is totally unique to him, which is kind of, to me, the most exciting stuff. Like, I really loved seeing the Xenomorph and seeing some really exciting Xenomorph scenes and some chase scenes and some really bloody, deaths. Those are all cool. But to me, I walked out of these two episodes mostly interested in all of the new zigging and zagging he was doing with these other characters and his conversations he was having about transhumanism and the future of artificial intelligence and like what the goal of a species is and what the definition of a human is and all of these big questions that are kind of on like the periphery of the Alien franchise, very heavily in like Prometheus and Alien Covenant, but not really throughout the rest of it. So I'm really happy to see that he's leaning into those themes pretty heavily here. And to me, I'm really excited to see where he goes with that stuff. I'm going to love seeing more of the Xenomorph, but I'm really more excited to see more of Wendy and her lost boys and all those questions they're having of who am I and how do I define myself? And that's really going to be what I'm looking for as we go through the rest of the show. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with it overall. But that's just how I feel. The Alien stuff has been great, but I'm really more curious about the rest of it. How do you feel about the balance of like tributing Alien versus doing new stuff in here?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of the new stuff that they are doing works really well. I think that they're introducing us to new aliens that we've never seen before, which I think is really interesting. And so they're able to do that while also giving us that old flavor of Alien. Like there's the stuff that you see like when someone's standing there just talking, you'll see the alien's like head move in the background and everything, and the way that they are doing that, like there's some stuff that's reminiscent of the old Alien like that. So, but they find a way to do that without a million callbacks, like what they did with Alien Romulus. So
yeah, I had a problem with Romulus because it wasn't just aping the style; it was just straight up doing a bunch of lines and stuff like that. And as far as I can tell, there weren't really like literally saying lines from Alien in this type of thing. It wasn't like, oh, he's saying, "Get away from her, you bitch," exactly like she said it in the movie. They weren't doing very, very direct callbacks like that, but they definitely are like, here is a crew sitting at a breakfast table eating, talking about like an alien species, and you're like, oh, this is essentially Alien. Like they did like a speed run of Alien in the first like 20 minutes of this episode, and that's confident to me. I think it's very bold to come out swinging with the alien and be like, yeah, we're not going to make you wait till like episode 5 to see this alien. We're going to make you right from episode 1, you're seeing the alien. But it also makes me concerned about how much of the alien are we actually going to be getting in the show. Like, are they blasting us up front with the alien in episode 1 and 2, and then we're not really going to get a xenomorph until 3-4 episodes from now? I really am curious how they balance that out. And is this a move of confidence, saying, yeah, I'm showing the alien right from the beginning, and you're going to end up falling in love with the other parts of the show? You're getting what you wanted right away, and then you're going to end up falling in love with all these other characters? Or is this like a desperation movie? He's like, okay, we got to show the alien really early on so people will watch this show. I don't know. We're not going to really know until we get the rest of this season. But to me, this premiere has that confidence of like, we're going to show you the alien. We're also going to show you this new stuff, and we're going to come out swinging. We're not going to make you wait. We're going to have the xenomorph from the first scene, essentially like killing people. And I'm excited to see how much of the xenomorph is present through the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm curious to that too, because the xenomorph. What's interesting about what they did is throughout a lot of the show. I mean, there's like a scene in episode 2 where you can see it clearly, but like a lot of the first 2 episodes is either the xenomorph is in the background and it's like moving its head like that, or a lot of times you can barely even see the xenomorph, even when it's attacked. That was like one of my issues with it, is when you get a very darkly lit room, and like the camera shakes and everything, you could barely even see what the xenomorph was doing. And then and that was kind of a issue I had. But also on the plus side, when you could see the xenomorph, it looked movie quality. I am so impressed with like the budget of the show and how far they went with getting the effects right and everything.
Yeah, in terms of the production and the effects is really, really impressive. And this is an extremely expensive show. I hope that they can have the viewership to back up that huge price tag, but it feels nice that you can actually see the money on the screen. I feel like sometimes you watch streaming shows, especially, or even just movies that come out from major studios, and they cost like $400 million or whatever, and you look at it and you're like, where did the money go? Because I'm not seeing it in the effects or in the sets or anything like that. And this show, you're seeing it. They're showing you the money in the production design. The alien ships look incredible. There's a lot of detail and set design to them. It doesn't feel like they're hanging out on like a sci-fi set. It feels like an actual spaceship and tight hallways and those types of things. And they really sweat the details of making it feel like the alien world come to life. It's set like essentially right before Alien takes place, like during Ripley's mission essentially in space. So it feels exactly like you picked up a camera, during the time of Alien, and it really captured that vibe really well. So I was really impressed by that on the effects side. How did you feel about the effects overall? You said you liked it a lot, right?
But yeah, I really liked the effects overall. I loved like the cinematography, the set design, everything. It was very much reminiscent of like the first Alien, but also had like a modern sleekness to it, if that makes sense too. So it kind of it all looked beautiful to me. Like there's so many frames I could have easily paused and just like kept just staring at or something. It's just it really impressed me with how gorgeous it looked. And
I really liked how it blended like Noah Hawley's look, stuff like Legion, along with the alien look. Like there's this scene where Wendy is laying there ready to be transferred towards the beginning of the episode, and you get like this table they're laying out with like this big blue beam behind them, and like it was a perfect shot of like this room feels very like Ridley Scott, but Ridley Scott would never do like a blaring blue like beam thing like that. Feels like a Noah Hawley Legion thing. So it was a really cool combination of these very specific styles, because Noah Hawley in Fargo, he's doing his own style, but he's also very, very much taking from the Coen brothers and doing their style. So it's interesting to see him do the same thing here, where he's doing his style, but he's unafraid to just put a bunch of Ridley Scott on top of that too, which has been I can't wait to see how much he swerves those two styles, right? Like, is he gonna have some crazy Fargo style one-off episode where they're like at a dream sequence bowling alley or something? Give me something wild. I really would love to see him go off the rails towards the end of the season. But yeah, I'm impressed by that balance so far.
Yeah,
I would like to talk a little bit about that character, Wendy, if you have anything left to say about the effects, because I think Wendy is one of the most fascinating parts of the show.
Yeah, Wendy really has impressed me. I want to hear your thoughts on her real quick.
Yeah, I really like Wendy because I think she's the embodiment of what the show ultimately is going to be about, right? They introduced this very new concept of like a literally hybrid human, like a human whose consciousness was put into a synthetic body and is now being kept alive essentially indefinitely. And they introduce this young girl. We don't, I believe, that get her actual name. We may get a line here and there somewhere to say is this girl's actual name, but she's dying from cancer and she's brought to this experimental lab essentially and said, look, your daughter is dying. We can keep her alive, but in order to do that, we're going to transfer her consciousness into this synthetic being. And then she transfers into this young adult, and now we have this like adult woman, but inside of that adult woman's body is a child. And it's a very odd decision that could go so many wrong ways so quickly, but the show is walking that fine line of making that really interesting and really compelling. And the actress is giving a really great performance of looking and feeling like a child who's like hanging her arms down and like pouting and not really sure where she's going. She's the older sister, but she still very much feels like a kid inside of this adult body. She has that sense of wonder, but also that sense of fear and that wide-eyed wonder that little kid has. So I was really, really impressed with that performance. I want to hear your thought on general about the performance and how do you feel about that character?
Yeah, I thought the character was really fascinating. First off, I want to say that like the original girl had the cancer in her. When I was looking at like video breakdowns and watching the episode, like they look a lot alike. The casting they actually got like really spot on there. Kind of interesting. But also I wanted to
just interrupt you for 1 second and say that we found out that the young girl's name is Macy. She was 11 years old. So her name, we did get her name at some point in the episode. It was Macy.
Macy. Okay, that's the young girl that had the cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Macy. Okay, cool. Yeah, I thought it was a really fascinating character. She might be my favorite character so far. It's between her or the brother, but we'll get to the brother's character here soon too.
Yeah, I'm really curious with that character, like when they continue to explore that line of like Macy versus Wendy, and are they the same person or are they like two beings inside one? At some point, is this synthetic being gonna try and peek out and fight for control in some kind of way like that? We're seeing a lot of conversation in this show about hybrids and like goals of evolution and things like that, and I think it's good and interesting that we have this two beings that have merged into one being. It's a similar concept of like force evolution, right? Like these two different forms of a species coming into one form. And there's also like the three alien species that introduced. You have the xenomorph, but you also have these two other alien species that are seemingly going to be kind of fighting to be the dominant species among those three aliens. And you have the three like synths and cyborgs and hybrids of those three competing technologies battling to be like the dominant technology. So you have all these very interesting parallels of like these three different but similar beings fighting to become like the dominant one. And I'm really curious to see how they explore all of that, especially like the parallel to the corporate world. And like there's these like 4 or 5 companies that are struggling to become the dominant company, but eventually it becomes 3 companies because Wayland and Itani, they merge, they become a hybrid. So I wonder if that's something that was very intentional about like the goal of a company versus the goal of a person versus the goal of a species. Are those all one and the same, or are they different? And that seems like something that Noah Hawley is going to be exploring a lot as he gets through these various characters. And I think that Wendy is sort of like the center of all of that, right? She's these two beings brought into one. She's looking for her brother. At some point, are we going to see like her and the brother merge, and now it becomes like 3 beings in one? I really, really am curious to see what the future of that is, especially when you look at that as a parallel to all of these other things that seem to be coming in threes, like the alien species, the different companies. even three classes, you know, like the rich, the working class, and then like the truly working class. What are they telling us about that? I'm really, really excited to see all of that explored. How do you feel in general about like what the show is saying and any of the thematic ideas you might be picking up on that I'm not picking up on here?
I think you're picking up on pretty much all the right thematic ideas. It's what I mostly got from this show is they're doing a literal, not subtle way of telling us what it means to be human and what it is like to be a human in a world that pretty much is just, I guess, trying to use us and not like actually accepting of us and all that. And it's just, I find it really fascinating, a lot of the social commentary that Noah Hawley is throwing in here. And I do agree, they're about big uh, corporations as well. The bad guy of this show is literally like a trillionaire young kid or something who's like, shouldn't even have that much money at that age, but he's, just has that much money because he kind of reminded me a little bit of the Paul Reiser character from Aliens,
Mm-hmm.
a bit like this snarky businessman who, you know, thinks he has it all and basically thinks he could run the world, but he is on. But then you look at him and like deep down, he's just as pathetic as us all. So it's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of parallels, I think, to corporations versus like invasive species, right? Like the goal of a species is it to survive? Is it to evolve and become better, or is it to just like consume everything around it and make everything its own species, you know? And I think when you look at the corporation analog, like is the goal of a corporation just to like sustain its product and sustain its customer base? Not really. The goal always seems to be to get bigger and to consume everything around it and to have a finger in every single market everywhere and to control every single part of that market. And I think that is definitely a parallel here between invasive species coming into a place to destroy it, to, have these destructive relationships with the environment. And I think they're trying to make a very, very direct parallel between that and corporations coming out into space and making profit out of space and forcing humans to be the guinea pigs that go out into space and just die for their gain. And a really, really interesting parallel between that. I really can't wait to see how they keep exploring that. I wasn't totally sold on this villain though. That's one of my negatives, is like this villain who's just like this arrogant rich kid chewing on an apple, talking about how he's gonna like explode human potential. It just kind of felt like a very well-worn character, just kind of like, oh yeah, he's the rich asshole guy and he's kind of, really privileged and all of this stuff. And I understand it's part of the commentary and I agree with it, but I'm curious to see how they go about making him more interesting than just kind of like this arrogant rich guy who thinks he's the best thing ever. Are they going to do anything to kind of explore him a little bit more or give us something to connect to and maybe even see him as more of a person than we see him as initially, right? Because right now he just seems kind of like a giant asshole, and I want to leave this season thinking like, you know what, I actually kind of like that guy and care for him a little bit and understand his plight a little more than I do now, right?
Yeah, because that's kind of like I compared him to the Paul Reiser character in Aliens, and I feel like that's what he definitely was supposed to be inspired off of. But I feel like at least with Paul Reiser's character, you got to understand him more, and even if you didn't like him, you got to understand him and where he was coming from and everything. And so it's like, so I kind of hope as the show goes along that they let us have a chance to, because that's one difference between a show and a movie. A movie, you only have 2 hours, so you got to move everything at a quicker pace. Make sure you develop all the characters in the right time. This is giving us 10 hours. If it's 10 episodes, it's giving us 10 hours worth of content. So they have more time to develop characters and to go deeper into them. And I think that they'll do that with him eventually.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how they delve into him. I think you're right, they're going to, because there's a lot of setup here about like, they show that scene with like a scorpion, and you think, oh, the scorpion, let's just kill it. It's just like some bug or whatever. And there's a conversation with Timothy Oliphant's character, I believe it is, says, uh, you know, think about what the scorpion must feel. Like this, what happens if you kill the scorpion and then the scorpion's friend comes to kill you because what the hell, man, you just killed my friend. I'm gonna kill you back, right? And I think that is definitely meant to be a parallel to the xenomorph. I feel like we're gonna get some level of almost like a sympathetic arc for the xenomorph of like in the end it's just kind of like a trapped being trying to survive just as much as everybody else is, you know. And xenomorph isn't necessarily doing something wrong. It's just a living thing trying to keep being alive, just like we all are, right? Trying to spread our species around the globe and be the dominant species. And I'm really curious to see how much they go into making us care about the xenomorphs. You know, when something like 28 years later, there was an element of like, oh, maybe we should be empathizing with these zombies a little bit because they were at some point people. And I wonder if they're gonna want us to empathize with the xenomorph and think like, oh, at some point this was like a a species that could have been something else, you know, and what was the revolutionary path that brought them here. I wonder what that's going to be like. But I think that scene definitely is also trying to talk about the characters. And you might see this guy as just a rich asshole who's doing whatever he wants, but like, what must he feel? What must his life be like? How lonely must that be to be like that rich and that untouchable and that unknowable? You know, he must not have anyone at all to talk to or relate to, and that seems to be his motivation. He wants someone who he can talk to, someone that he can have a good conversation with, and that's something I think you can empathize with to that level of rich. It's like you are not living a normal life. You don't have friends. You don't have just like acquaintances or coworkers. Everybody around you is trying to like use you for something, right? And that's got to be a lonely and isolating life.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that's just it would feel very isolating, and I wouldn't put it past them to make a commentary down the line, like what you said with the xenomorph. Like a lot of these sci-fi stuff or stuff that has to do with animals, like if you look at the Planet of the Apes movies, it says, yeah, those apes are doing bad stuff, but humanity is evil and all that. And I could see them going a route of, you know, yeah, sure, the xenomorphs kill people, they do stuff, but let's not forget humanity is evil. And I could see them going a route like that of like really showing humanity as being the bad guys because we're invading their homes basically.
Mm-hmm.
They're making a home on the ship, they're making a home on stuff like this, and we're invading that
Yeah, we
by
just invaded their planet and like took
yeah,
their eggs and took their kids and left, you know? And like, of course they came to kill us. Why would you not do that, right? Like, if someone came to your house and took your family and left, you would go after them.
yeah. So it makes complete sense.
I'm really what else can we talk about here? I wanted to mention a shout out that the first episode ends with a Black Sabbath song. Shout out to the King. I wonder if that was
Yeah,
intentionally timed not long after the death of Ozzy, or if that was just like a happy coincidence. That feels like an intentional choice, though.
probably. Yeah, but I loved the music choices for both episodes because even the second episode I had a really great song at the end, but I just don't remember what song they used there at the
Yeah,
end.
you mentioned how humanity may end up being the ultimate villain here, and that seems to be the case for like throughout the Alien franchise. Like the real villain of the Alien is not the alien; it's the company who sent them there, right, and left them to die. And
Yeah,
they spend a lot of the time fighting against the android more so than even the alien. And there's a line in here too about like how humanity tends to think of ourselves as not animals, right? Like they're all those other species, those are the animals. We're the humans, and we put up all these houses and all of these barriers to pretend like we're not part of nature. But when you take those walls down and put us back in the food chain, like we're just some other little idiot being running around getting eaten, you know. And there's this sense of like there's a great divide, like this great divorce people set up between like humanity and nature. We like to think that we're not part of nature somehow, and we like to make as much of a barrier as we can between us and the natural world. But there's that great line of like, you know, I think it's Timothy Oliphant's character who says that like we are the food. Like you are the food. You might think that you're the top of the food chain, but when you put yourself back out there, you're not, right? And it's definitely a really interesting theme that humanity is ultimately the most invasive species. You know, like no species has done more damage to the planet than us. No species has killed more other species than us. You know, and no species creates nuclear bombs other than us. No species goes to war at mass scales and kills thousands of people other than humanity, right? There's no more destructive species on the planet than us, but we like to pretend that isn't true. We like to pretend that we own the whole planet and everybody else is supposed to hold accountable to us, and that just isn't true. And I really like that this show is critical of humanity's kind of place in the evolutionary scale of what the future of humanity might be and how we as a species have gone wrong. I think in terms of like we are just very, very destructive to the planet around us. We don't value the planet. We don't value other living things that are on this planet with us, and that seems to be something that the show is definitely tackling.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything else that stood out to you in this episode or these two episodes that you want to mention? I think we covered this quite in depth, but
I would like for us to kind of talk about the two new alien species that were introduced. So we had one creepy looking eyeball octopus creature that like
I loved it.
goes into your eye socket and like devours your brain from the inside, then pops out. Poor kitty cat. But but I knew something was up with that cat the moment it like was just like it's funny. It's kind of a reference to the first Alien because the first Alien had Jonesy, the cat, there, and then now this cat is not like Jonesy. Jonesy was indestructible. I don't know how Jonesy lived throughout that whole movie, but this cat is not indestructible. So
no, this cat did not make it.
Yeah. So but then you also had the other one, which was almost like those the like trap the leaf monster things. I forget what you call them, but it had its mouth open up and it's like a plant almost, and it shot out like what looked like a blooming flower or something. It was kind of interesting.
It's interesting too that like in all those hybrids you can see elements of the xenomorph, like the mouth coming out of the other mouth, and like the chest bursts are coming out of the chest, but instead of the chest it's the head, and you see like those weird parallels that I'm really excited though, because those are really crazy looking species and it really upped the body horror. I think this show was surprised me in how far I was willing to go in terms of gore, in terms of being scary. This genuinely was very scary, and I think the Alien franchise is not often like super scary. Honestly, like the first one is definitely a horror movie, but up behind the first one, there isn't really a lot of like actually scary alien movies, and this is genuinely pretty scary at parts. And I'm really excited to see more of those other species. I think it gives them a good excuse to have scary scenes and action scenes, but without having to show the xenomorph like all the time. You can get a whole episode just about like that parasite in your head alien, and not even have to show a xenomorph on the screen at all, and still be really scary and really exciting. And it's also going to be fun when we get like Alien versus Predator style, get these hybrids like fighting each other on the battlefield, the battle royale with like 20 xenomorphs and 20 parasite brain alien monsters, and see them all fight it out. I want to get that scene. I'm also curious if we see like any future evolutions of these aliens, like we saw in Prometheus, like the xenomorph kind of evolves into another version of the xenomorph, and the show is definitely about like species of evolution and like the next steps of species and that kind of stuff. So I'm curious if we get yet another step forward in terms of these aliens, or are we going to see like two of these species merge into one and become a crazy hybrid species that fights the xenomorph, anything like that. I'm really curious what the future is for these aliens. Is there even more hybrids, or are these like going to be our three,
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, because there were only 2 episodes in, and we got introduced to these 2 hybrids, that I wonder if there could be more down the road that they introduce us to. I mean, if I don't know how long they're planning on going with the show. If the show lasts like 4 seasons or so, like I can't imagine you doing 4 seasons and not introducing us to more hybrids. So
yeah, and like I mentioned, it's a great excuse, because if you have to use if you have to use the xenomorph every single episode, that's gonna get thin pretty quick. I'm gonna end up being tired of the xenomorph. I'm not gonna want to see it all the time. And now you have a good excuse to give me some crazy fucked up body horror without actually having to do the xenomorph at all. It's a good little cheat. No, I see you. I see what you're doing.
yeah, I really like that a lot.
Do you have any predictions going forward for what you think is going to happen for some of these characters, or what's going to happen plot wise for the show?
So prediction. So I now am worried that we're gonna lose because I was very shocked that we got the reveal of Wendy confessing to her brother everything. I was very shocked that that happened in episode 2 because some big reveal like that usually happens in the middle of the show, but this happened only in episode 2. And now I'm worried that like her brother is going to die very soon because since they revealed that this soon, I'm worried now that he's about to die like within the next few episodes or something.
Yeah, I definitely think it was a good choice to get that confrontation done early because I definitely was watching this and I was thinking, oh, she's gonna reunite with her brother like in the finale or like maybe like the episode before that or whatever of this season. But really interesting move to do it so early. And yeah, like you said, it makes me fear for this brother, but it also makes me feel more confident in my theory that at some point in these next couple episodes, this brother is either going to get shot or get bit by the alien or something like that beyond death's door. And the only way he's going to survive is by merging with Wendy. And they'll take him back to that facility from the first episode, and he's going to merge with Wendy. And then we're going to have a Wendy walking around that is essentially like the brother and the sister in one. And it's going to be a weird form of like hybrid evolution, like three beings that have become one being. And are they going to share a consciousness? Are they going to be like, Jekyll and Hyde fighting in the one brain, or are they going to be like a singular being that's like a merging of both personalities? What is that going to be like? Who is that going to be, right? Is that Wendy? Is that her brother? Is that the synth, or is that like a whole new being? I think that would be something they could really explore a lot with.
Yeah, that would be very interesting, especially because the actress playing Wendy already is acting so much like a child because she's supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
with the whole 'cause instead of using the kid's name like saying boy genius and all that, that's like how like children talk and all that. So like she already has that kind of childlike performance. So you'd have to mix in that childlike performance with the adult brother, and it would be very interesting. I think she could pull it off, but it'd be a very interesting combination.
Yeah, it would be a really challenging performance and something that I feel like should get her on that Emmy consideration list. If she can pull that off, she's already on my list for like best performances of the year just from pulling off that hybrid of like a child and an adult. And I'm really excited to see, when they challenge that character more, give her some more moral conflict and that kind of thing, push her to her limits. I can't wait to see that performance explored a lot more.
Yeah, and I definitely think this show will do bangers at the Emmys for next year because it's a big show, and a lot of times the Emmys will go for shows that are just really popular and big, even if they aren't the best shows in the world. They'll go with the shows that are like that were widely talked about. So
I am looking forward to seeing how or if they maintain this production value. Like these first two episodes look incredible. They're shot really well. It feels essentially movie quality, like not totally movie quality, but it feels like something that could be standing up tall with Romulus in terms of production value. And I wouldn't really like to not see that fall off. Like sometimes these shows start out really strong with a great pilot or a couple episodes, and then when the money starts to fall out or a little, and then in the middle of the season, they start standing around in boardrooms talking for half the episode or something like that. And I really hope that they don't scale down too much. I don't want to see them go too big. Like we already are seeing a giant spaceship crashing into like the middle of a huge city, and I'm already questioning like, okay, how are you going to explain this one? Like how are you possibly going to cover this one up, Waylon Yutani? You got a lot of explaining to do in terms of like how do people not know about aliens after this? I have that fear in my head of like, okay, are all these characters going to die because nobody should be around after this story that like knows about xenomorphs, right? So what does that spell for all of these characters? And I'm scared, but I'm excited to see some of them bite the dust. I'm sure we're going to have a shorter cast list in the finale than we have right now if I had to make some predictions, right? But it's going to be a fun ride, and I hope it explores that transhumanism stuff a lot more, because to me that is so relevant, and this concept of artificial intelligence and the line between human and being, and like having to look at person and human as two different words that mean two different things. It's going to be a very complicated next decade in terms of how we define personhood and how where we like limit our technology. So that's going to be, I hope, something that is explored a lot throughout the show, along with the many other like themes and character arcs that are going on here. Is there anything else you hope to see in the future going on Alien Earth?
Well, one thing I hope to not see going on Alien Earth is I know you talked about it scaling back. I'm kind of sick and tired. Every show feels like they want to do this now. Stranger Things did it. Severance did it. So many shows will do, oh, let's just do one episode that focuses primarily on this one person in the cast and not even show anything about what fans like about the show. Let's not show them any of that. Let's just give them a backstory on this person. So I don't want like a whole episode. Yes, I want to connect to the trillionaire in this show, that like boy genius. I want to be able to connect to him on an emotional level, but like I don't want them to throw me a whole episode dedicated to this kid saying, "Oh, here's a whole episode. Here's his life. What happened to him? How did he get to this point? Here's how he got to this point." Oh, and I was like, I don't need that with Alien Earth show. I just you can still let me connect to him, but still give me all the kind of alien stuff that I like to see.
Yeah, I'm
So
really excited because I'm sure we're gonna get at least we'll get one episode in there that I think is weird, right? That seems to be the Holly staple, like when he was in Fargo. Yeah, the typical Fargo, and then there's one episode where you're like, wow, we kind of went for the fences on that one. It doesn't always work, but I think when you limit it to here's your experimental episode, it can be very fun. Like here's your episode to just kind of go wild and do something weird with it and see what you get out of it. I hope it's like, to me, it's not weird to just be like, here's a character's backstory. I don't really want that. Like I want your red episode to be like, here's the Xenomorph's origin story. Or like, give me something crazy like that.
yeah,
You know, an entire episode of just the Xenomorph with no dialogue. That would be really fun. You know, and I really am excited to see how Holly experiments here. And he got us in that comfy zone with his premiere of like, oh yeah, it's Alien. It looks like Alien. It feels like Alien. It's nice. I'm back in the Alien world. But I really hope that in these next few episodes they can get away from just, oh look, it's Alien, and try and like define this show as its own thing and it's with its own ideas and its own characters and that kind of stuff. And it's done a good job so far with that, so I'm not disappointed in that so far. But that's something that I really hope that he stays with, you know, because I think this premiere did a good job of balancing Alien with new material, and I hope the new material continues to stay fresh and exciting while also making sense in the Alien universe, right? I don't want this to go so off the rails that it doesn't even make sense to watch this along with Romulus and be like, this doesn't even seem like the same franchise, right? I really am wondering how this show balances that line.
yeah. I'm gonna, because that's one thing when I heard Noah Hawley was doing this show. Fargo has some serious moments to it for sure, but it also has a very twisted sense of humor at times and
And
very,
Legion too.
yeah, same with Legion. So it's one of those that things that it makes me interested because Noah Hawley's Alien Earth. It's like, huh, okay, so he's gonna give us the serious moments, but also I could just picture them as the show goes along. It has some sense of like twisted humor thrown in there.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be fun, especially with these kids in adult bodies. I'm sure there's gonna be some kind of like really fun child shenanigan episode. Like I want to see them get into like a hook style food fight or something like that. You know, like I want to see a really fun moment with these kids being kids. You know, like going on recess essentially and like playing or something like that. It would be really fun to see a moment of just like pure unadulterated like child joy from these people. It'd be a fun moment to see them pull that off. It's such
but
a like horrific environment to see them find some moment of like fun.
what would be so funny about that too is because they're all in adult bodies
Hmm.
doing that. So that's what would make it even weirder is all these kids just having food fights or doing whatever in adult bodies. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that whole plot of kids in adult bodies. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, I think we're in good hands here. Like that's such a Noah Hawley weirdo thing to do that like no other writer would ever do, and to throw that into an Alien franchise that is so serious is just like such a fun decision. And I really am. I can't wait to see how he balances that tone.
Yeah. And it brings life to this franchise too, because even though I was a fan of Alien Romulus, it didn't add anything new to the Alien universe. So I was just like, are we just gonna retread the same old water that we have been retreading all the time? But this show is actually adding new things that have never been done before in the Alien franchise, and that really interests me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see the rest of it. These first two episodes were pretty impressive for me. I have concerns and I have fears going forward, but it really did impress me with these first two episodes, and I can't wait to cover the rest of the season with you here on Here's the Thing.
What fears and concerns do you have going forward?
We talked a lot about the tonal balance, and I'm hoping that I can keep that tone, but I also have fears about just this is a very wide cast of characters here, and I don't necessarily care about all of them. Like I mentioned that I'm not into the rich guy character yet, and I'm also just not into like his whole surrounding characters of all these like Hunger Games looking cronies who have like crazy looking hair and stuff. And then it just I'm really hoping that there's more to those characters than just they're the rich crazy people, and I hope that he does more with that. I Yeah, that's my biggest concern is honestly he has a lot going on here and a lot thematically, a lot of plot lines, a lot of storylines, and I just hope it can balance all of that. That's a lot to do in one show. A lot of especially within a franchise that people have such like strict ideas of what it should be. This could be a show where I feel like if he goes very high on the Noah Hawley side of things, it could end up like really turning the fans against the show and being like Noah Hawley ruined Alien. He made it stupid. He made it goofy. He made it this or that. And I really hope that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that doesn't happen either, because there's a certain line of goofiness where it's like, okay, this works. This is actually really clever. And then there's a line of goofiness where it could just be way too overdone. Like for something like Fargo, that's a show where, you know, people are always talking like this, and they have like these weird accents. They have like all this stuff like that. That's like the Fargo universe, and it's always been quirky. The Coen brothers made it very quirky, so you can get as kind of quirky as you want to with a show like that. And then Legion, it's a mutant superhero kind of thing that it's like, oh well, we could go as artistic as we want with this. So, but with this one, I I don't know, because I already had to suspend some disbelief on the show, and one of my cons, because it wasn't perfect for me. One of my cons was that like you had to suspend disbelief because there's stuff like in the background, like such as when the ship crash landed, they go on that ship and everything is still perfectly in place on the ship, even though they crash landed. Like they go into a room and the plates are all laid out just right, the trays are all laid out still perfect, and all this
I
stuff. I'm
didn't
like,
think about that.
and I'm just like, it's one of those things where it's like the ship just crashed. Wouldn't this be spilt all over the place? like, I don't.
Everything is as damaged as the plot needs it to be, right? Like if they gotta go and find like a drive or something, that drive will be fine, but everything else will be totally destroyed.
Yeah, it's like the only thing that was destroyed on that ship was wires. Everything else is like so perfectly in place, and and I just was like, this is not like a crash ship at all. So I had to like suspend some disbelief there. That kind of level of suspending disbelief, I'm fine with. But I hope they don't go so far with it where it's like I have to just keep on suspending disbelief even on like actual like plot points.
Yeah. I
But
think this first episode did struggle a bit at the beginning in terms of like it was giving me a lot of exposition, a bunch of dates and places, and like constantly showing me like text on the screen. And I felt for the first like 20 minutes, I was very kind of overwhelmed in terms of like, okay, where are we right now? A lot of like timeline jumping and flashes of what could be the future, what might be the past. It's hard to really tell. And I felt like the first few minutes are pretty jumbled, and thankfully it evened out. But to me, I was a little nervous for those first few minutes. I was thinking, like, man, is this going to be like just chaotic and exposition jumps everywhere? And there's a scene where he's like, "See, and this is Wayland Utani, and this is this," and I was like, "Oh man!" But thankfully, those are just kind of bumps that I think get you to where you've got to be, and a lot of that stuff in terms of like what company owns what planet and what company owns what part of the city and this and that. I think what you need to know is going to come to fruition as the show goes along, right? Like if I'm not really sure Wayland Yutani owns what hemisphere again, like I don't think that's really going to matter that much. And if it does, they're going to remind me of it, I would hope. But that was a hurdle for me, is I just think the first few minutes of at least the first episode felt like a lot of exposition, a lot of just like catching me up to what's going on with all these characters. It was
Yeah,
kind of disorienting.
yeah, I agree because there's so many characters that you're trying to follow, and I don't even know all their names and everything yet.
Hmm.
Like I just feel like we haven't spent enough time with them. I don't even really know the characters' names, and like I know there was Timothy Oliphant on this show who was a pretty interesting character, and I thought the main girl was pretty interesting, but then you have like the brother, you have Timothy Oliphant's wife, then you have like the cyborg on the ship. You have like the other stuff. Like it's just like so many characters that they're throwing at you at once.
I really like Timothy Oliphant's look. He has such a bizarre appearance in this show. Like when he first showed up on screen, I was like, I don't think I like that. That is so weird and off color for what I'm looking at. But then like once you see his performance, he has like this weird stilted like stiffness to him, and like this crazy like blonde, almost white looking hair, and these huge like beady eyes. Just a really bizarre, very, very bizarre looking synthetic character. And the synths are always kind of off-putting in the Alien. The sitting there not really looking like humans, kind of barfing out, white sludge and all that stuff. So I feel like Timothy Oliphant sells. Like you look at this guy and you're like, that's not a human. Like this uncanny valley person, like that is not a person. Timothy Oliphant is looking like a true weirdo in this.
Oh yeah, yeah. He definitely has a very much of a weirdness. Tim, I almost didn't even like if I didn't know that Timothy Oliphant was going to be in the show, I would have seen him and I would have like maybe not even been able to point him out instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been like, who is that? Until like way later in the show as such. But yeah,
It's an interesting tonal shift too. That the first episode is mostly pretty serious. Like there's funny lines here and there, but it's a pretty serious episode. And the second episode turns into the schlock territory for a while. Like it really goes into almost like cartoony kind of territory. And I had a really good time with that. But I think I could see somebody not really vibing with that tonal shift of like it goes into really kind of almost goofy territory in some of the action, some of the body horror. But to me, I wanted that, right? Like I want to see that mix of sci-fi and thinking man sci-fi, but also I kind of just want to see like crazy alien hybrids. And I feel like especially if you're going to introduce these hybrids, you want to show them in action, right? But yeah, so one of our friends criticized the episode as being very cartoonish and over the top, and I kind of felt that, but I just had a really good time with that tone, I guess.
oh yeah, yeah. I think I forget if they said that about episode 1 or 2, but I know that they definitely criticized the episode for that. But I feel like with something like an alien show, you can make it feel a little bit more because even some of the best, well, not okay, maybe not the best alien movies, but some of the alien films in the franchise, such as like Alien Resurrection, you can't watch that and tell me that doesn't feel like a cartoon, or AVP and all that feels a lot like feel cartoony and everything. So
Yeah, there's definitely some AVP elements in here. He's talking about how this is basically canon to the first Alien, but I feel like he's taken some cues from the other ones. And Aliens especially has like that really big action feel to it. Everyone's kind of saying one-liners and that kind of stuff, and this doesn't go that far. But this episode, I feel like the second episode, if the first episode is Alien, the second episode is much more Aliens. It goes more towards the fun and the action side of it, but still has, I think, a lot of that sci-fi that makes it interesting, right? The show seems like it's going to be a interesting hybrid in itself of like all these different tones of what Alien is. Trying to find like a medium of that will be interesting.
yeah, I agree. That'll be interesting.
I don't think I have much else to say. I know next week we're going to try and do this live the day of the episode airing, so it will actually be live like that night to give our thoughts immediately after.
Yeah, we would definitely be live on Tuesday next week. The only reason we weren't yesterday is is if it was a minor sickness, I would have, but I had a full on like fever, so I was like sleeping and everything. It was like all day pretty much. So that was the only reason we didn't yesterday. But but this coming Tuesday, we're gonna be here around 9:30 ish or so to give you guys our our pretty much our straight up reactions to the episode and talk about it as it airs. And and I'm excited. We have that, and then we also have Peacemaker coming soon that we're going to be talking about. This really excites me because for a little while there was nothing to really watch on TV for quite a bit there, and then like like we get we had a lull from like maybe May to like now or something where it's like, oh, there's Stick. Okay, that's like all there. Like it's like okay, there's like nothing really to watch. But now in August, I mean, Wednesday is not a good show, but we at least had like Wednesday, and then we had like Alien Earth, and then now like Peacemaker. So you get like all those in just 1 month of August. So at least now there's like more TV to watch and everything.
And I love that the show is releasing weekly too. You know, the temptation would be, oh, let's drop this all at once. People can binge it. It's only 8 episodes. They'll see how good it is on Twitter or whatever. But I love the fact that you're going to watch this over the course of like a month and 2 months or whatever, and sit there and have these conversations with your friends and sit there and talk about, you know, transhumanism and all these concepts of evolution that you might not have thought about before watching this show. And when it all dumps at once, that's not really something you get to have, right? It all gets just engorged into your brain, and you say that was pretty good, and then you don't even think about it, you know, after a couple of days. So I love really getting weekly doses of sci-fi. I'm happy to be back for it. And yeah, like you said, Peacemaker's coming up. I don't know if I'll be covering that on the show or not. We'll have to figure out who's going to be on that, but I'll definitely be watching it. And I'll definitely be watching Alien Earth. So I'm excited to see what happens next. We talked this episode to death, but it was 2 episodes, so there was a lot to talk about, and I can't wait to see what happens next, where they go with all these themes and all these characters. Let us know in the comments what you guys thought of these 2 episodes, what you got, if you have any theories, anything like that, let me know, because we kind of went off the cuff for this one. You know, these after shows are not really like hugely prepared. It's just kind of like us talking through what we thought and what we were feeling as we were watching the episode. So let us know what you were thinking and feeling in the comments below. If you liked what you saw, hit like. If you want to see more of it, subscribe. We come back all the time, like Michael said, for movie reviews, TV reviews, all that kind of stuff. Awards season is heating up by the day. We'll probably be doing some awards coverage pretty soon. If you want any of that, come back and see some more. If you liked us, let us know you liked us. If you didn't like us, bye.